For as long as anyone could remember, the tiny cafe on the corner of Maple Street had been a peaceful place where locals came to sip coffee, nibble on muffins, and share quiet conversations. It wasn't a glamorous place, just a warm, homey spot. With cozy armchairs and framed pictures of musicians on the walls, the soft hum of chatter, the clink of cups, and the gentle jazz playing in the background gave the place a comforting feel. But no one who walked into that cafe on a cloudy Thursday afternoon could have guessed what was about to happen, or who among them was about to change the mood entirely. Her name was Emily Carter. She had been working as a waitress at Caf Harmony for nearly 2 years. Most of the regular customers liked her. She was always polite, always smiling, and always efficient with their orders. But that was all anyone really knew about her. She wore her hair in a simple bun, dressed in her maroon apron, and floated from table to table with the practiced ease of someone used to being unnoticed. Emily had always preferred to stay in the background. She kept her head down, did her job, well, and went home quietly after her shift. No one asked her many questions, and she never offered much about herself. To most, she was just a nice, ordinary girl working an ordinary job, but Emily was far from ordinary. Behind her soft smile and quiet manner hid a world that no one knew about, a world of melodies, rhythms, and dreams she had buried deep inside herself. Years ago, when she was just a little girl, Emily had fallen in love with the piano. Her mother, a single parent and a music teacher, had taught her how to place her fingers on the keys, how to listen with her heart, and how to make the piano sing. Emily had spent countless hours practicing, pouring her soul into every note. Music was her secret language, her safe space. But life, as it often does, had its own plans. When her mother passed away suddenly when Emily was 17, everything changed. The dream of attending music school faded beneath the weight of bills and survival. She dropped out of school, took whatever job she could find, and tried to live one day at a time. The piano sat silently in her small apartment, covered with a dusty cloth, waiting for fingers that no longer had the time, nor the courage to play. That Thursday started like any other. The clouds hung low in the sky, and a soft drizzle tapped on the cafe windows. Emily was working the morning shift, refilling coffee mugs and offering pastries with a practiced smile. A small group of tourists had gathered near the back, chatting about their trip. A couple sat near the window, holding hands and whispering. And in the center of the room, an old, upright piano stood against the wall. Untouched for years, it had been placed there more as decoration than for use. Few customers even noticed it anymore. Occasionally, a curious child would press a few keys, producing an awkward sound before being hurried away by a parent. But that day, a customer named Mr. Dawsona, retired music professor visiting town, noticed the piano and asked aloud, "Does anyone ever play this thing?" Emily was nearby, clearing a table. She paused slightly but said nothing. The manager, Sarah, laughed lightly. "It's mostly just for show. None of us here are musicians." Mr. Dawson smiled. What a shame. A piano should never be silent. Then he turned to Emily. "What about you, young lady? Ever give it a try?" She froze for half a second, her heart skipping a beat. "No, sir. I'm just the waitress." But that simple question stirred something inside her. For the rest of her shift, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She glanced at the piano several times, her hands twitching slightly as if they remembered something her mind had tried to forget. Later that afternoon, as the lunch rush died down and the cafe grew quiet, Emily stood behind the counter, wiping mugs. The piano sat across the room, bathed in a beam of soft light from the window. Her chest felt heavy, full of emotion she had tried to bury for years. Then, without fully understanding why, she walked toward it. A few customers looked up. Curiously, as she pulled out the stool and sat down, she ran her fingers over the keys, brushing off a thin layer of dust. Her hands trembled slightly, but she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she began to play. At first, it was soft, just a few gentle notes that drifted through the air like a whisper. People paused mid-conversation. Coffee cups stopped, midway to mouths. The sound was rich, delicate, and full of emotion. Then, as her confidence grew, so did the music. Her fingers danced across the keys with a grace and power that no one could have imagined. It was a classical piece, Chopin. Perhaps, but she made it her own, blending it with something raw and deeply personal. The cafe fell completely silent. Even the kitchen staff poked their heads out. Sarah stood frozen behind the register. Mr. Dawson's eyes widened in disbelief. No one had ever imagined that the shy waitress who served coffee and cleared tables held this kind of brilliance within. Her Emily was lost in the music. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Every note was a memory, every chord a release. Her mother's face flashed before her eyes. She felt tears pricking at the corners, but she kept playing. The music swelled, filled the entire room, wrapped around every person sitting there, and touched something deep in their hearts. When she finished, there was a long moment of stunned silence and then applause. Loud, emotional, sincere applause. The entire cafe stood up, clapping and cheering. A few people had tears in their eyes. Mr. Dawson walked up to her, speechless, and simply placed a hand on her shoulder. Emily looked around, blinking in disbelief. She hadn't meant to perform. She hadn't even planned to touch the piano. But something had called to her, and she had answered. From that day on, everything changed. Word of her performance spread. Quickly, a video someone had recorded on their phone went viral online. Thousands of people watched it, moved by the sight of a humble waitress revealing such astonishing talent. The local news picked up the story. Musicians, producers, and even a few talent scouts reached out to her. She was invited to perform at a local concert hall. Her life, which had been so quiet and hidden, was suddenly full of color, sound, and opportunity. But through it all, Emily remained humble. She kept working at the cafe part-time, still smiling at customers and serving coffee. But now, every Saturday afternoon, she performed at the cafe's newly created piano hour. Locals and tourists packed the place to hear her play. She didn't always perform classical pieces. Sometimes she played jazz, other times gentle lullabies, and occasionally original pieces she had composed over the years, but never dared to share. Music became her voice again. What stunned people, though? Most wasn't just her skill, it was the way she made them feel. When Emily played, it wasn't just sound. It was emotion, story, and soul. She reminded people of the beauty hidden in ordinary places, the brilliance hidden behind quiet faces. One evening, as she played a piece she had written for her late mother, she noticed a young girl watching her from the front row with wide, shining eyes. Emily smiled and nodded toward her. After the performance, the girl came up and said, "I want to play the piano too. I didn't know someone like me could." Emily knelt down and said softly, "You absolutely can. Never be afraid to let the world hear your song, because sometimes brilliance isn't loud. Sometimes it waits quietly, tucked away in the corners of everyday life, until just the right moment. And when it finally steps into the light, it doesn't just shine. It inspires."